When he says it, he means it, and you don't get to bend it and twist it to what you want. That's the whole point of Deuteronomy 8:2. He's allowing you to walk through this wilderness walk so that you can prove whether or not it's in your heart to do what he says. I focus a lot on the commandments, but ultimately it's about people. It's about living together forever with people.
Okay, sound's on, everything's good? All right. Well, welcome. Wait, hold on. I gave the keys to my car to Robert. He was looking for you anyway, so. Okay. So it's in the back of the car, if you can get the keys. All right, well, welcome to, sorry about that private little conversation. We were having all of that done just before going live, and then as soon as we went live, oh, by the way, let's go ahead and have a little. Pay no attention to that previous stuff. Cut. Take two. Hi, and welcome to the Deuteronomy readings. Good morning. Boker Tov. All right, well, today is the last day of the readings. Oh. I told you at the beginning that it says, oh, wow, it seems like we got all this time, and then we'd blink and it'd be over. Well, guess what? I tried not to blink. It didn't work, because now it's pretty much almost over. It's very sad. But the nice thing is that it gets us wanting more. It gets us wanting more. And that's basically where Shemini Atzeret come from. And the Jews believe that the idea of the 8th day festival is like Abba knew we want just one more day. Can we just stay one more day? So after Sukkot is over, and everybody has to realize and make sure that when you're talking to people about it, it's not the last day of Sukkot, it's the holy day. Today is the last day of Sukkot. Tomorrow is Shemini Atzeret. Okay? The last day of Sukkot is not a holy day, meaning like a Mikra Kodesh. It's not a day you take off from work. But Shemini Atzeret is. Okay? The 8th day festival. And so it's not really so much that it's the 8th day of Sukkot. It's a closing festival. Sukkot is 7 days. All right, so today we're going to go from chapter 29 to the end of the book of Deuteronomy. Chapter 29 to the end of Deuteronomy. We've got 11 reading spots. Okay, we've got 11 reading spots. All right, for those of you that were interested, we now have the ability to open up the marketplace in the back. Okay, because Kurt is here with the cash box and everything, so he can do all that stuff. So the marketplace is open for those who want to quietly get anything out of the back. All right. Okay, so let's start off with the way this is going to work in case anybody's new. Some of you may have heard what we were doing and got excited and wanted to check it out, and this is your first time on the live stream, so you might be new to all this. What we're going to do is we're going to read the book of Deuteronomy from chapter 29 to the end of the book, and then afterwards we'll take a quick break, and after the break we will come back and discuss what we've read. And when we're discussing it today, depending on how much we want to get into some of the things in chapters 29 to 34, we may also then open it up to anything from the book of Deuteronomy, get some impressions of how you felt about the readings and that kind of thing. But we will be ending it a little bit earlier so that we can go take the group photo. So we'll be ending at about 12:45 before, no, we haven't even come close to ending on time yet. So, so ending early, we'll keep our track of not ending on time. But I told my wife when she said, I want you guys to end early. I said, early? You mean like 1:15? So that way we're only 15 minutes late? That would be early for us. All right, so let's begin with prayer. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, Father, we come before you to read your word, to stand before the brethren. There will be those who have an opportunity to read your word, and they will be able to expound upon it, and they will be able to share. And so, Father, for all of us that are hearing the word, those of us who are reading the word, we ask that you would bless all that is done, that we would receive of the word, and then more importantly, that that word would take root, be implanted in our hearts, and bear fruit. So, Father, we thank you so much for your word. We ask that you would guide and lead all things, that it would be to your glory and to your honor, as we come before you now, doing all in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah. Amen. 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 Okay. First reader, Linda. I'm going to switch to the wireless. Is that ready? Okay, it is on, good. All right, he who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Linda, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, chapter 29, verses 1 through 15.
These are the words of the covenant which Yahweh commanded Moshe to make with the children of Israel in the land of Moab, besides the covenant which he made with them in Horeb. And Moshe called all Israel and said to them, You yourselves saw that all that Yahweh did before your eyes in the land of Mitzrayim to Pharaoh and to all his servants, to all his land. Your eyes saw the great trials, the signs, and those great wonders. But Yahweh has not given you a heart to know, and eyes to see, and ears to hear, till this day. And I have led you 40 years in the wilderness. Your garments have not worn out on you, your sandals have not worn out on your feet. You ate no bread and drank no wine nor strong drink, so that you might know that I am Yahweh your Elohim. And when you came to this place, Sihon, sovereign of Heshbon, and Og, sovereign of Bashan, came out against us to battle, and we struck them, and took their land, and gave it as an inheritance to the Reubenites, and to the Gadites, and to the half-tribe of Manasseh. Therefore you shall guard the words of this covenant, and do them, so that you prosper in all that you do. All of you standing today before Yahweh your Elohim, your leaders, your tribes, your elders, and your officers, and all the men of Israel, your little ones, your wives, and your sojourner who is in the midst of your camp, from the one who cuts your wood to the one who draws your water, so that you should enter into covenant with Yahweh your Elohim, and into his oath which Yahweh your Elohim makes with you today, in order to establish you today as a people for himself, and he himself be your Elohim, as he has spoken to you, as he has sworn to your fathers, to Abraham, to Yitzhak, and to Yaakov. And not with you alone I am making this covenant and this oath, but with him who stands here with us today before Yahweh our Elohim, as well as with him who is not here with us today.
Amen. And that's us. Isn't that exciting? Amen. All right, Sam. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Sam, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. All right, Sam's going to take us from verse 16 to the end of the chapter.
For you know how we dwelt in the land of Mitzrayim, and how we passed through the nations which you passed through. And you saw their abominations and their idols, wood and stone, silver and gold, which were with them. Lest there should be among you a man or woman or clan or tribe whose heart turns away today from Yahweh our Elohim to go and serve the mighty ones of these nations. Lest there should be among you a root bearing bitterness or wormwood. And it shall be, when he hears the words of this curse, that he should bless himself in his heart, saying, I have peace, though I walk in the stubbornness of my heart, in order to add drunkenness to thirst. Yahweh would not forgive him, but rather the displeasure of Yahweh and his jealousy shall burn against that man, and every curse that is written in this book shall settle on him, and Yahweh shall blot out his name from under the heavens. And Yahweh shall separate him for evil out of all the tribes of Israel, according to all the curses of the covenant that are written in this book of the Torah. And the generation to come of your children who rise up after you, and the foreigner who comes from a far land shall say, when they see the plagues of that land and the sicknesses which Yahweh has sent into it, all its land is sulfur, salt, and burning. It is not sown, nor does it bear, nor does any grass grow there, like the overthrow of Sodom and Amorah, Admah and Zeboim, which Yahweh overthrew in his displeasure and his wrath. And all the nations shall say, why has Yahweh done so to this land? What does the heat of this great displeasure mean? And it shall be said, because they have forsaken the covenant of Yahweh, Elohim of their fathers, which he made with them when he bought them out of the land of Mitzrayim. And they went and served other mighty ones, and bowed themselves to them, mighty ones that they did not know, and that he had not given them. Therefore the displeasure of Yahweh burned against this land, to bring on it every curse that is written in this book. And Yahweh uprooted them from their land in displeasure and in wrath, and in great rage, and cast them into another land as it is today. The secret matters belong to Yahweh our Elohim, but what is revealed belongs to us and to our children forever, to do all the words of this Torah.
Amen. Amen. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, actually, I've got more than enough, and I've got Wes that's multitasking. I'm going to get him in here as well. So let me just make sure I can squeeze him in somewhere. All right, Ali. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Ali, who's come to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Ali's going to take us into chapter 31 and read chapter 30 and read the entire chapter. Okay, chapter 30, 1 through 20.
Now when all these things come upon you, the blessing and the curse that I have set before you, and you take them to heart in all the nations where Adonai your God has banished you, and you return to Adonai your God and listen to his voice, according to all that I am commanding you today, you and your children, with all your heart and with all your soul, then Adonai your God will bring you back from captivity and have compassion on you, and he will return and gather you from all the peoples where Adonai your God has scattered you. Even your outcasts are at the ends of the heavens. From there Adonai your God will gather you, and from there he will bring you. Adonai your God will bring you into the land that your fathers possessed, and you will possess it, and he will do you good and multiply you more than your fathers. Also Adonai your God will circumcise your heart and the heart of your descendants, to love Adonai your God with all your heart and with all your soul, in order that you may live. Adonai your God will put all these curses on your enemies and on those who hate you, who persecuted you. Then you will return and listen to the voice of Adonai and do all his mitzvot that I am commanding you today. Adonai your God will make you prosper in all the work of your hand, in the fruit of your womb, and the offspring of your livestock, and the produce of your soil, for good. For Adonai will again rejoice over you for good, as he rejoiced over your fathers, when you listened to the voice of Adonai your God to keep his mitzvot and his statutes that are written in this scroll of the Torah. When you turn to Adonai your God with all your heart and with all your soul. For this mitzvah that I am commanding you today is not too difficult for you, nor is it far off. It is not in the heavens that you should say, who will go up for us to the heavens and get it for us, and have us hear it so we may do it. Nor is it across the sea that you should say, who will cross over for us to the other side of the sea and get it for us, and have us hear it so we may do it. No, the word is very near to you, in your mouth and in your heart, to do it. See, I have set before you today life and good, and death and evil. What I am commanding you today is to love Adonai your God, to walk in his ways, and to keep his mitzvot, statutes and ordinances. Then you will live and multiply, and Adonai your God will bless you in the land you are going in to possess. But if your heart turns away and you do not listen, but are drawn away and bow down to other gods and worship them, I tell you today that you will certainly perish. You will not prolong your days on the land where you are about to cross over the Jordan to go in to possess. I call the heavens and the earth to witness about you today that I have set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. Therefore choose life so that you and your descendants may live, by loving Adonai your God, listening to his voice and clinging to him. For he is your life and the strength of your days, that you may dwell on the land that Adonai swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Yitzchak, and to Yaakov, to give them.
Amen. Amen. Hey, Wes, we'll get Wes in here quickly. Wes, hold on, Kelly, we're going to get you next. We have him on father duties, and he's trying to make sure his kids are good, and he also wants to run up here and quickly get in there, so he couldn't hold a seat and also be in the back at the same time. So we're trying to squeeze him in there so he can get double duty in here. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Wes, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, take us into chapter 31, reading verses 1 through 15.
And Moshe went and spoke these words to all of Israel. And he said to them, I am 120 years old today. I am no longer able to go out and come in. And Yahweh has said to me, You do not pass over the Yarden. Yahweh your Elohim himself is passing over before you. He shall destroy these nations from before you, and you possess them. Yeshua himself is passing over before you, as Yahweh has spoken, and Yahweh shall do to them as he did to Sihon and to Og, and the sovereigns of the Amorites and their land, when he destroyed them. And Yahweh shall give them over to you, and you shall do to them according to all the command which I have commanded you. Be strong and courageous. Do not fear nor be afraid of them, for it is Yahweh your Elohim who is going with you. He does not fail you nor forsake you. And Moshe called Joshua and said to him before the eyes of all Israel, be strong and courageous, for you are going with this people to the land which Yahweh has sworn to their fathers to give them. And you are to let them inherit it. And it is Yahweh who is going before you. He himself is with you. He does not fail you nor forsake you. Do not fear nor be discouraged. And Moshe wrote his Torah and gave it to the priests, the son of the Levi, who bore the ark of the covenant of Yahweh, and to all the elders of Israel. And Moshe commanded them, saying, at the end of 7 years, at the appointed time, the year of release, at the festival of Sukkot, when all Israel comes to appear before Yahweh your Elohim, in the place which he chooses, read this Torah before all Israel in their hearing. Assemble the people, the men and the women and the little ones, and your sojourner who is within your gates, so that they hear and that they learn to fear Yahweh your Elohim, and to guard and to do all the words of this Torah. And their children who have not known it should hear and learn to fear Yahweh your Elohim, as long as you live in the land that you are possessing over the Yarden. You are passing over the Yarden to possess. And Yahweh said to Moshe, see, the days have drawn near for you to die. Call Joshua and present yourselves in the tent of appointment, so that I command him. And Moshe and Joshua went and presented themselves in the tent of appointment. And Yahweh appeared. Was that? Okay. And Yahweh appeared at the tent in a column of a cloud, and the column of a cloud stood above the door of the tent.
Amen. Amen. All right. No problem. Thank you. All right. So you heard those verses right there that talked about why we're doing this. I said, and you should gather everybody together and read this book. Okay. Next up, Kelly. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Kelly, who's come out to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Kelly, take us from verse 16 to the end of chapter 31. Okay, 16 to the end of the chapter.
And Yahweh said to Moshe, see, you are about to sleep with your fathers, and this people shall rise and whore after the mighty ones of the strangers of the land, into the midst of which they shall enter, and forsake me and break my covenant which I have made with them. Then my displeasure shall burn against them in that day, and I shall forsake them and hide my face from them, and they shall be consumed. And many evils and distresses shall come upon them, and it shall be said in that day, is it not because our Elohim is not in our midst that these evils have come upon us? And I shall certainly hide my face in that day, because of all the evil which they have done, and they shall turn to other mighty ones. And now write down this song for yourselves, and teach it to the children of Israel. Put it in their mouths, so that this song is to me for a witness against the children of Israel. And I shall bring them to the land flowing with milk and honey, of which I swore to their fathers. And they shall eat and be satisfied and be fat. Then they shall turn to other mighty ones, and they shall serve them, and scorn me, and break my covenant. And it shall be, when many evils and distresses come upon them, that this song shall answer before them as a witness. For it is not to be forgotten in the mouths of their seed. For I know their thoughts, which they are forming today, even before I bring them to the land of which I swore to give them. And Moshe wrote this song the same day, and taught it to the children of Israel. And he commanded Yehoshua, son of Nun, and said, Be strong and courageous, for you are to bring the children of Israel into the land of which I swore to them, and I myself am with you. And it came to be, when Moshe had completed writing the words of this Torah in a book until their completion. And Moshe commanded the Levites who bore the ark of the covenant of Yahweh, saying, Take this book of the Torah, and you shall place it beside the ark of the covenant of Yahweh your Elohim, and it shall be there as a witness against you. For I myself know your rebellion and your stiff neck. See, while I am still alive with you today, you have been rebellious against Yahweh. Then how much more after my death? Assemble unto me all the elders of your tribes and your officers, so that I speak these words in their hearing, and call the heavens and the earth to witness against them. For I know that after my death you shall do very corruptly, and turn aside from the way which I have commanded you. And evil shall come to you in the latter days, because you do what is evil in the eyes of Yahweh, to provoke him through the work of your hands. So Moshe spoke in the hearing of all the assembly of Israel the words of this song till their completion.
Amen. All right, thank you, Kelly. Okay, Barbara? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Okay, perfect. We got just the right number of people. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Barbara, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, we're going to go into chapter 32 and read verses 1 through 18.
And this is the song of Moses. Give ear, O heavens, and let me speak, and hear, O earth, the words of my mouth. Let my instruction fall as rain, my speech drop down as dew, as fine rain on the tender plants, and as showers on the grass. For I proclaim the name of Yahuwah. Ascribe greatness to our Elohim. The rock, his work is perfect, for all his ways are right ruling, and El of truth, and without unrighteousness. Righteous and straight is he. A twisted and crooked generation has corrupted itself. Their blemish, they are not his children. Do you do this to Yahuwah, O foolish and unwise people? Is he not your father, who bought you, who created you and established you? Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask your father, and let him show you. Your elders, and let them say to you, when the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam according to the number of the children of Israel. For the portion of Yahuwah is his people, Ya'akov, his allotted inheritance. He found him in a wilderness and in a wasted, howling desert. He encompassed him. He made him understand. He watched over him as the apple of his eye. As an eagle stirs up its nest and flutters over its young, spreading out its wings, taking them up, bearing them on its wings. Yahuwah alone led him, and there was no strange mighty one with him. He made him ride in the heights of the earth, and he ate the fruit of the fields. And he made him to draw honey from the rock, and oil from the flinty rock. Was I to go? 18, thank you. And curds from the cattle, and milk of the flock, with fat of lambs, and rams of the breed of Bashan, and goats with the choicest wheat. And you drank wine, the blood of the grapes. But Yeshurun grew fat and kicked, and you grew fat, and you grew thick. You are covered with fat. So he forsook Eloah, who made him, and scorned the rock of his deliverance. They moved him to vengeance with foreign matters. With abominations they provoked him. They slaughtered demons, not Eloah. Many ones they did not know. New ones who came lately, which your fathers did not fear. You neglected the rock who brought you forth, and forgot the El who fathered you.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Okay, we've got Kirk. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Kirk, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, he's going to take us now from verse 19 to verse 35. We're still in chapter 32, verse 19 to verse 35.
And Yahweh saw and despised because of the provocation of his sons and his daughters. And he said, let me hide my face from them. Let me see their end, what their end is. For they are a perverse generation, children in whom there is no trusting. They made me jealous by what is not El. They provoked me with their worthless matters, but I make them jealous by those who are no people. I provoke them with a foolish nation. For a fire was kindled in my wrath, and burns to the bottom of Sheol, and consumes the earth and its increase, and sets on fire the foundations of mountains. I gather evils upon them. I use up my arrows upon them, wasted by scarcity of food, and consumed by heat and bitter destruction. In the teeth of beasts I send upon them, with the poison of serpents of the dust. The sword bereaves from the outside, and fear from within, both young man and maiden, nursing child, the man of gray hairs. I said, I should blow them away. I should make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. If I did not fear the enemy's taunt, lest their adversaries misunderstand, lest they say, our hand is high, and Yahweh has not done all this. For they are a nation lost to counsel, and there is no understanding in them. If they were wise, they would understand this. They would consider their latter end. How would one chase 1,000, and two put 10,000 to flight, unless their rock had sold them, and Yahweh had given them up? For their rock is not like our rock. Even our enemies are judges. Their vine is of the vine of Sedom and of the fields of Amorah. Their grapes are the grapes of gall, their clusters are bitter. Their wine is the poison of serpents and the fierce venom of cobras. Is it not stored up with me, sealed up among my treasures? Vengeance is mine, and repayment at the time their foot slips. For near is the day of their calamity, and the matters prepared are hastening to them.
Thank you. Amen. Okay, thank you, Kirk. Okay, next. We got Kip. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Kip, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Kip, take us now from verse 36 to the end of the chapter.
For Adonai rightly rules his people and has compassion on his servants. when he sees that their power is gone and there is no one remaining, shut up or at large. And he shall say, where are the mighty ones, the rock in whom they sought refuge? Who ate the fat of their slaughterings and drank the wine of their drink offering? Let them arise and help you. Let it be a hiding place for you. See now that I am he, and there is no Elohim besides me. I put to death and I make alive. I have wounded and I heal. And from my hand no one delivers. For I lift my hand to the heavens and shall say, as I live forever, if I have sharpened my flashing sword and my hand takes hold on judgment, I shall return vengeance to my enemies and repay those who hate me. I make my arrows drunk with blood, and my sword devours flesh, with the blood of the slain and the captives. From the long-haired enemy chiefs, O nations, acclaim his people, for he avenges the blood of his servants, and returns vengeance to his adversaries, and shall pardon his land, his people. Then Moshe came with Hosea, son of Nun, and spoke all the words of this song in the hearing of the people. And when Moshe ended speaking all these words to all Israel, he said to them, set your heart on all the words with which I warn you today, so that you command your children to guard to do all the words of this Torah. For it is not a worthless word for you, because it is your life. And by this word you prolong your days on the soil which you pass over the Jordan to possess. And Adonai spoke to Moshe that came that day, saying, go up this mountain of the Abram, Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab, which is opposite Jericho, and look at the land of Canaan, which I have given to the children of Israel as a possession, and die on the mountain which you ascend, and be gathered to your people, as Aaron your brother died on Mount Hor, and was gathered to his people. Because you trespassed against me in the midst of the children of Israel at the waters of Meribah Kadesh, in the wilderness of Sin, because you did not set me apart in the midst of the children of Israel. For you are to look at the land before you, but not enter there into the land which I am giving to the children of Israel.
Amen, amen. Thank you, Kip. All right, I got 3 more readings. I got 3 more readers. That worked out perfectly. All right, Arthur. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Arthur, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Arthur's going to take us into chapter 33 and read verses 1 through 17.
And this is the blessing with which Moshe, the man of Elohim, blessed the children of Israel before his death. And he said, Yahweh came from Sinai and rose from Seir for them. He shone forth from Mount Paran and came with 10,000 of set-apart ones at his right hand, a law of fire for them. Indeed, he loves the peoples. All his set-apart ones are in your hand, and they sat down at your feet, receiving your words. Moshe commanded us a Torah, an inheritance of the assembly of Yaakov. And he was sovereign in Yeshurun, when the heads of the people were gathered, the tribes of Israel. Let Reuben live and not die, and let his men be numbered. And this is of Yehuda, and he said, hear, Yahweh, the voice of Yehuda, and bring him to his people. His hands shall fight for him, and you be a help against his enemies. And Levi, he said, your Tumen and your Urim belong to your lovingly committed one, whom you tried at Massah, with whom you contended at the waters of Meribah, who said of his father and mother, I have not seen them, and he did not acknowledge his brothers or know his own children, for they have guarded your word and watched over your covenant. They teach your right rulings to Jacob and your Torah to Israel. They put incense before you and the complete ascending offering on your slaughter place. O Yahweh, bless his strength and accept the word of his hands. Smite the loins of those who rise against him, and of those who hate him, they rise no more. Of Benjamin he said, let the beloved of Yahweh dwell in safety by him, shielding him all the day as he dwells between his shoulders. And of Joseph he said, blessed of Yahweh is his land, with the choices from the heavens, with the dew and the deep lying beneath, with the choice fruits of the sun, with the choice yields of the months, with the finest of the ancient mountains, with the choicest of everlasting hills, with the choices of the earth and all that fills it, and the good pleasure of him who dwelt in the bush. Let it come on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him who was separate from his brothers. His splendor is like a firstborn bull, and his horns are like the horns of a wild ox. With him he pushes the peoples to the ends of the earth, and they are the 10,000s of Ephraim, and they are the thousands of Manasseh.
Amen. Thank you, Arthur. Okay, next reader. We've got Pat. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Pat, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. All right, Pat, you're going to take us from verse 18 to the end of chapter 33.
And of Zebulun he said, rejoice, O Zebulun, in your going out, and Issachar in your tents. And they call peoples to the mountains. They slaughter slaughterings of righteousness. For they drew from the riches of the seas and treasures hidden in the sand. And of Gad he said, blessed is he who enlarges Gad. He dwells as a lion, and shall tear off the arm also the crown. And he chose the best for himself, for there the portion of the inscriber was hidden. And he came with the heads of the people, the righteous of Yahweh. He did, and his right rulings with Israel. And Dan, he said, Dan is a lion's cub that leaps from Bashan. And of Naphtali he said, O Naphtali, satisfied with pleasure and filled with the blessings of Yahweh, possesses the west and the south. And of Asher he said, Asher is most blessed of sons. Let him be accepted by his brothers, and dip his foot in oil. Your sandals are iron and bronze, and your strength as your days. O Jerusalem, there is no one like El, riding the heavens to help you, and on the clouds of his excellency. The Elohim of old is a refuge, and breath are everlasting arms. And he drives out the enemy from before you, and says, destroy. Thus Israel dwells in safety. The fountains of Jacob alone in a land of grain and new wine. His heavens also drop down dew. Blessed are you, O Israel, who is like you, a people saved by Yahweh, the shield of your help, and he who is the sword of your excellency. And your enemies are subdued before you, and you tread down their high places.
Amen. Amen. Okay, Hugo's going to come up and close us out by reading all of chapter 34. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Hugo, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. All right, Hugo, go ahead and read us chapter 34.
And Moshe went up from the desert plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is opposite Jericho. And Yahweh showed him all the land of Gilad, as far as Dan, and all Naphtali, and the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Yehudah, as far as the western sea, and the Negev, and the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees, as far as Zoar. And Yahweh said to him, this is the land of which I swore to Abraham, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov, saying, To your seed I give it. I have let you look at it with your eyes, but you do not pass over there. And Moshe, the servant of Yahweh, died there in the land of Moab, according to the mouth of Yahweh. And he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beit Peor, and no one knows his burial place to this day. And Moshe was 120 years old when he died. His eyes were not dim, nor his freshness gone. And the children of Israel wept for Moshe in the desert plains of Moab 30 days. And the days of weeping and mourning for Moshe were completed. And Yehoshua, son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom, for Moshe had laid his hands on him. And the children of Israel listened to him and did as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And since then no prophet has arisen in Israel like Moshe, whom Yahweh knew face to face, for all the signs and wonders which Yahweh sent him to do in the land of Mitzrayim, before Pharaoh and before all his servants, and in all his land, and for all that strong hand and all the great fearsome deeds which Moshe did before the eyes of all Israel.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you to all you readers. Thank you for coming up and participating. And I don't mean just today's readers, but from the whole beginning from Deuteronomy chapter 1 all the way through here to the end of chapter 34. Definitely, I would ask an appreciation for all of you that were here to sit and listen and to participate in all the discussions. Now, it's a tradition at the end of a book, in the Jewish community, when they finish reading one of the first 5 books, they close with, and I think most of you are familiar, Chazak, Chazak, v'nitz chazek, which means be strong, and may we be strengthened. And so, because that's the belief that the words, like we read in one of the verses, actually we read it in 31:6, and then we see Moses saying this also to Yehoshua several times here and other places, be strong and of good courage. Chazak, be strong. And so we should be strong, and may we be strengthened by the word of Yahweh that we read. Amen? Amen. Father, we come before you. We have read your word. And we're going to take a break here, and then we're going to come back and discuss your word. In the meantime, Father, we ask that you would inspire and guide us and lead us to ask the questions that we need to ask, supply the answers that need to be supplied, and that we can walk away from this reading changed, to be growing further and more and transforming more into the image of Yeshua, your Son. So, Father, we want to thank you for your word. We thank you for the opportunity to meet together and hear it and read it, to fulfill the commandment, to have it read before all the peoples, and that, Father, that you would guide and lead it was just such a blessing. And we ask that you would continue now as we finish up and close with the discussion of your word. So thank you, Father. We bless you. We give you all the glory and all the honor. In the name of Yeshua, our Messiah. Amen. 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 We're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and discuss what we read.
You guys ought to know I wasn't trying to say That was terrible. Green egg, ace of spades. Yeah, we got this one, guys. Oh, God. Man. That was awful. You ought to be praising your partner for not killing you. I know, right? Because I know some people, if you'd have done that, they'd have been like, oh, my deal? Yeah. Now, you read that, you try to cheat on someone else's deal. That's my deal, about to make points? Yeah. That was funny, though. I've never seen that. See, I got to see something I ain't never seen. That was awful. That sucks.
Here comes Kirk, who's going to grab one. I'm back on. All right, welcome back. Hope everybody's ready to discuss the word. Amen. Now, I did make a relatively bold claim at the beginning of all this. I want to ask if I was right, which is, I did say that those of you that would come every day for the readings would find that this might be just about the best part of the whole thing. Would you agree? Okay, amen. So some of you are going to go back and meet some of your friends who went to other places or did other things, and they'll say, what did you guys do when you were over there? Well, we spent 3 hours every morning reading the Word and talking about it. You know. That's what they're going to be thinking, right? They're going to be like, you did what? Or you're going to tell your friends that are not
Torah observant, don't understand your love for the word, and they're going to think for sure you did what? You sat and read chapters of the Bible and talked about it for 3 hours every day? Ugh. No. Yeah. You know? That's why we can't get out of here on time. You guys can keep going and going. Awesome. All right, so what we're going to do here, we've got a couple of guys with microphones in their hands. If you raise your hand, they'll come around and give you one. If you're on the live stream, Kurt, we got that? Okay, Kurt's got the live stream. How many we got on there? 75 computers. Awesome. Okay, to all of you on the live stream, if you've been Facebook messaging me or emailing me or anything digital since I got here, I haven't gotten any of it. It's there, I'm sure, but I have not been able to check any of those things. And so my messages that normally are about 20,000 on my phone are probably 22,000 now on my phone. So it's gotten pretty bad. But we'll try to catch up on all of these things as soon as I get back. All right, as soon as we get back. Actually, I'll leave this here in case I need to see what time it is. All right, it's about 11:30. Now, here's the good news. I don't know if you've been outside, but the sun is out. It is sunny. It is sunshine. And so we're going to get this group picture in, and we're going to get the mikveh in as best we can. We're going to try and get that worked out today. How many of you are here to do the mikveh? All right, we still got a bunch of you. Okay, so we'll try to do that right away after lunch. We're going to kind of get that squeezed in. Is everybody still going to be here until after lunch? We're good. Okay. So we'll try to do that right after lunch. We'll get the lunch in because I want to be able to announce to everybody at lunch, too, in case some of the people are not here, that we're going to still have the mikveh. Okay, so after lunch. Also, again, a reminder, on your schedule, there is supper after Holy Day services tomorrow. I don't know why that didn't show up on the printout. Okay? But there is supper. It was on your meal plan, so there was a meal plan, the supper was on there. It just didn't show up on the schedule. All right, so we should be all set for that. Now, the shofar clinic, we'll try to squeeze that in after the mikveh. And you'll get your first demonstration when I blow the shofar over everybody that went in the water. So that'll be your first demonstration there. Okay, so what we're going to do today, as we close out the book of Deuteronomy, is we'll start out and see what questions or comments there are from chapters 29 through the end of the book. If we have time, we could also then open up some comments and just get some feedback about the experience. For how many of you, this is the first time you've done this? Okay. All right. What'd you think of it? Awesome. All right, good. We'll have the mic go around at some point and cover that. Okay, so beginning in chapter 29, if you have comments, questions, or any of that stuff, raise your hand. The microphone will go around. And we'll start with Arthur. Okay, it could have been Hugo, but I saw Arthur first. Okay, go ahead, Arthur.
Shalom.
Shalom.
I think a good place to start would be in 29. And sometimes wonder, who does this apply to, And very clearly it says, to all of you who are standing here today, first of all, to the leaders, to the tribes, the elders, and the officers, and all the men of Israel. And sometimes the question is, does it apply to the women? Well, what does it say? Your children, your little ones, and your wives, and your sojourner who's in the midst of you, and from whoever is working for you, cutting wood, or to the one who draws water. And the other one, it also applies to the people that weren't there, the ones who were coming in the future. And I think Rabbi mentioned us, and that would certainly apply to us. And, of course, this repeats itself in other verses, and I won't quote those right now. But this goes over and over again. What do we keep of the Torah? Well, if we go to verse 29 and other verses, it says belongs to our children forever and to do all the words of the Torah. Not only some of the words, but all the words. So I thought it would be a good place to start.
Amen. Excellent place to start, and I get to check a few check boxes off here right away. This is good. All right, so the first check box, now of course we skipped two of the ones I've got and see if anybody hits those. But no, so the first thing is absolutely, this is for everyone. We even have the stranger who's in the midst that's mentioned in verse 11. We have in verse 14, it says, and not with you alone am I making this covenant, but with him who stands here with us today, as well as him who is not here with us today, so for the future. So that's excellent you brought that out. And of course, then in 29:29, this is what's important. Sometimes we focus on the first part, not the second part. It says the secret things, the secret matters belong to Yahweh. So if we would embrace that, we'd stop getting so frustrated and obsessing on the secret things. But focus on part 2, which is, but what is revealed? You are responsible for what you know, what he's revealed to you. So what is revealed, and by the way, let's not do this from sort of a charismatic Christian point of view. Oh, the Ruach revealed something to me. No, we're talking about simply he opened your eyes and your ears. That's one of the verses that we missed in chapter 29 and verse 4, when it talks about, but Yahweh has not given you a heart to know and eyes to see and ears to hear till this day. So that shows you that as much as they thought they knew, they still didn't know. And it also goes back to the Father and Son teaching that I did. Do you know the Father and the Son? When we talk about that, it's them. They have to give you the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and the heart to know. And here it is right in Deuteronomy 29, same thing. He gives those things to you. It doesn't say, well, it's about time you guys figured this stuff out and started seeing things. He said, no, I haven't given you that. Now I have, and then we get all this strong stuff like the Song of Moses and the warnings, etc., saying, now that you have eyes to see and a heart to know and ears to hear and all that stuff, you have no excuse. You have no excuse. Okay? And so this is really important. So then we have the secret matter. So it says, what is revealed? Well, what has been revealed? The eyes to see, ears to hear, heart to know what? The Torah. He says, what has been revealed belongs to us and our children forever to do what? This is what's revealed, the words of the Torah. So that you're responsible for. You are responsible because it belongs to you. It doesn't belong to you so you can do whatever you want with it, like most things that belong to you. It means it was created for you, or you actually you were created for it. Torah came first. You know, when in the beginning it says, let there be light, Torah was brought into the world. Yeshua and his light was brought into the world. Yeshua is the living Torah. Everything is held together by that. We came into it a few days later in creation. But we are designed for it, as opposed to it designed for us. And so let's be focusing more on what is revealed than what is the secret. Everybody wants to focus on that secret stuff. And then we neglect the revealed stuff, okay? And what's revealed, we're talking about what's revealed through the word itself, not through some, inspired, Ruach felt, whatever you think you're led by, Someone said we have people that have lead poisoning, okay? Well, I was led to this, or I just felt led to that. All right, I like that phrase. Help maybe wake everybody up to stop having that disease. It's very toxic. If you have lead poisoning, will kill you. Lead poisoning is very toxic. I mean, I'm talking about the actual, element lead. So just the same way, you could have a lot of problems with that I feel lead problem, okay? Because the key word in that is I. Well, I just feel lead. When we start off with that I, we probably are going to end up in trouble at some point. Thank you, Arthur. Okay, Hugo.
If I may, it seems like a theme of these last few chapters in Deuteronomy, starting particularly in 31, is succession, the continuance of the community, the nation. So I was thinking, it might be especially pertinent in the light of the discussion about community that we had late yesterday afternoon, to perhaps think about succession and its application in our situation. But just to preface that by saying, in my mind at least, Rabbi, you are the anointed, appointed, the Nasi, and wouldn't want it any other way. Realities of life, however, and even with Moshe, it arrived here in these chapters, that for the continuity of the community, succession needed to happen for the community to continue even if the Nasi rabbi leader is no longer there. So then in the light of these chapters, as well as perhaps the 12, Yeshua leaving earth and what happened after that, how should we think about, plan for, work toward a healthy succession so that the community can continue despite whatever may happen in our particular situation to you? How are we to deal with that?
I just won't go. How's that?
That's a good plan, but the realities of life dictate otherwise.
I understand. No, this is a really good question. Okay, so let's answer. What does Scripture show us as the answer? Come on now. You see the examples with Moses right there, and you see the same thing with Yeshua. What do you see actually happening? Moses did select one, but what the point was, at the appropriate time, the person that was needed was available, trained, and then anointed. So when we get towards that appropriate time, I'm sure Abba will give us the right person who can be appropriately trained and then anointed. And it's done, the succession is done where the one who's in the leadership lays hands on the next one. There's no self-appointing. The one who is goes ahead and passes that baton to the next one. So it's a great question, and it's a question that if I was sitting in your chairs, I'd be very concerned about it. And for those of you that are not familiar with the Hebrew nasi, which is one of the words you used, I'm sure you're familiar with leadership or rabbi and stuff, but what about nasi? Nasi simply means the leader of the leaders. In the Sanhedrin, that would have been the head of the Sanhedrin or the president of the Sanhedrin. So it's an appropriate title to someone who leads a group with other leaders in it. So Moses would have been the nasi over all of the other leaders, okay? So at this point, I'm having my eyes constantly open to who that could be. Now, we do have, if anything were to happen in the meantime, we have Rabbi Tom right there. Okay, so he's very familiar with everything that we've been doing, as well as really good men in the leadership council, like Tony Hughes, who was here, like Raymond Rommel, who was here. Okay, Robert, of course, Kurt, of course. We've got all the other leaders that you may not be familiar with that are part of other congregations associated with us that come to these leadership meetings that would pick up and continue. At least that's what I would be, the hope would I would be, that would happen. But I would say that to you, Hugo, Abba will bring that person in place when it's time to have that person in place. And of course, that doesn't mean just because the person comes in place, my exit is like soon, because Joshua was with Moses a long time. But until Moses had Joshua, there wasn't anybody that we could point to and say, well, who's likely to be next? And even Joshua didn't know it until Moses finally went over to him and said, by the way, you're next, okay? And so that's a good question. And yes, you see a couple of themes here. One is about secession, because you see Moses coming out of the picture and then the baton being passed to Yehoshua. But also we see a theme of, which is really astounding to me, and I don't know if anybody's going to bring it up, so I'll just bring it up. It's how would you feel? See, I want you to, when you read Scripture, do two things, all right? You could do lots of other things, but I'd like you to do two things. I'd like you to try to put yourself in their shoes. And then the other thing I'd like you to do is figure out how does what you're reading apply to things in your own life today. Two totally different things I want you to do. Because one doesn't necessarily have to do with the other. I'd like you to try to empathize and understand what it might be like to have been there. But also I want you to then look from a different perspective. What am I reading? What I'm reading here, how does that apply to me? How can I take that and use that in my growth? So let's go to the first thing, which is the empathy thing. Could you imagine? They've been 40 years in the wilderness. They're at the Yarden. They're about to cross into the land. They've gotten all this encouragement and instruction, and the end of it is, and so by the way, when you screw this all up, could you imagine how that felt? And he called them, you've been rebellious, and you've been doing this. I mean, here they are. It's like you finally feel like we've arrived. He's going to let us go in. We've done something right. And boy, and Moses kicks them right in the gut and knocks the wind out of them. And says, and when you blow this, which you will, wow. I mean, and he was right. But I'm just trying to say, could you imagine how that felt? And so maybe that's where we go to the second thing and say, I don't want to ever have that be me, where I had all this information, all this experience, all of this, I tasted of it and I knew, and yet I'm going to blow this thing. Because they did, even after he warned them to. He said, look, I'm warning you, don't let this happen, but you're not going to listen because you never do. Which is why the Are You Listening teaching is probably an important one. And so that was the other theme that I saw in there, is that here it's all this encouragement, I lay before you life and death and choose life and all this other stuff. And then he goes, and by the way, I know you're not going to listen. I mean, that's the way he ends it. He ends it with, you're going to blow this. Wow. I mean, that's just, some of them were just thinking, now here's the funny part. I don't know if it's the funny part. Here's the interesting part. We all have the ability to misinterpret what leadership is doing, why they're doing it, what the point is. How many people do you think in Moses' day thought, he's just bitter because he can't go in? Do you think that was maybe one of their thoughts? I would think that. He's just mad, and so this is the overflow of the heart of the bitterness because he's not going in, so he's whacking at us. Because he's still mad that he doesn't get to go in. See, but that's not what was going on. But I bet you a lot of them felt that way because they weren't going to own their own rebellion. See, one of the problems we have as human beings, this wasn't really necessarily part of this here, but we'll have a little mini sermon here. Okay, one of our problems as human beings is taking responsibility. Oh, we're so quick to want the other person to do it and to point the finger. But most things don't happen in a vacuum. Almost nothing ever happens totally one-sided. Look, even car companies understand that when there's a collision, even if there's evidence that seems to prove that it's all one side's fault, they don't almost want to give you that. They can't believe it could all be one person's fault. Well, that's kind of the way it really is with human beings. You almost can never find yourself in a situation where you did nothing that had something to do with it. But yet we're always focused on the other person. So when are we going to get to that place? I think that's what Moses is talking about a little bit here, where you take your own personal responsibility, that when something happens, even if the other person responded in some horrible, awful way that made you feel horrible and awful, to say, not looking to blame yourself, just saying, what in this may have also been, what did I contribute to this? Maybe I contributed 10%, but what did I do? Or maybe I'm feeling this way, and the other person reacted the way they did, and I'm taking it the wrong way. Because all you saw was the anger. Look, I get this all the time. Being a strong red, being a leader, I'm sure Moses got it. You don't think Moses lashed out and cracked the whip and blasted a few people when he was dealing with those 2 or 3 million rebellious crazies? And they seemed like that's what they were. I don't think he was kidding when he said to Yahweh, if I've done anything that pleases you, please just kill me. Because let me tell you, I'll trade shoes with you any day. Because I don't think any of you can even, you think you know, you can't know. You have to be up here. You have to deal with the hundreds of people I deal with and the stuff that we deal with. We talked about it yesterday in the community meeting, that one of the reasons we struggle is because none of us wants to let go of our nonsense. And we all have got so much nonsense, it just needs to go. Just petty baby stuff. But what happens is we're used to other people coddling us with our petty baby stuff. So it never occurs to us that if someone comes in and starts blasting you, maybe they were over the top. Okay? Maybe they were overly strong in their reaction. But does that negate the fact that maybe you actually did something that needed correction? Does that change anything? No. But what does Scripture tell us? Nobody likes correction. See, and here's Moses, right? He's blasting them. And they could be interpreting, oh, he's just blah, blah, blah. He's just an angry guy and just this and that. We've seen him for 40 years. That guy has a temper problem, blah, blah, blah. And by the way, that would all be true. Doesn't change the fact that everything Moses said was also true. And we need to deal with that here. And this is a part of the problem between people and leadership that we need to learn. Because guess what? The king who's coming is the ultra red, if we're going to do the color code. And he's bringing not a tickle feather. He's Bring in a rod of iron, and that's supposed to evoke in us the idea of he's going to lay down the law, and you are going to have to just get with it or you're in trouble. I don't picture a lot. Look, he is the most compassionate, the most merciful, the most patient. But I don't see him coddling, enabling, entitling. Is that fair? Because why else would he have a rod of iron? He's going to walk around and say, it's time to grow up, everyone, starting now. I recommend we do it before that happens. It will be a lot less tough. It's gonna, look, some of you, I know, absolutely think, man, that Rabbi Steve, he is just, okay. I don't know if that's what they're thinking, but I appreciate that, Jeff. He said, awesome. Now, some people might, but I don't know. I hear a lot of people, I hear the word getting around about, because I can get very, and that's true, I can. And, look, I can relate to Moses. I'm not claiming I'm Moses. This is going to go all over the internet. Rabbi Steve thinks he's Moses. No. I'm talking about the bad parts of Moses, okay? I can relate to his struggle with his temper. I can relate to his frustration with people, okay? That doesn't justify it. I can empathize with the parts he struggled with. I don't claim to be the humblest of men as he has been called, but I can certainly see the struggles he had with his temper and with people and with patience. It doesn't say he was the most patient of men. It says he was the most humble. And so we, as a group, have to think about this as a group. And I like, actually, Hugo, you did make a really good point here, is that we need to think about, now that as a group we're going from where we were somewhere, and we have to deal with leadership, how are we going to do that? What is that going to look like? And what if that leadership exposes or notices some of your flaws and brings them to your attention and doesn't do it very nicely? At least the way you feel about it, because I can promise you, here's the problem with leadership. Just so you can understand this side of it. It's not just me. It could be Rabbi Tom or any leader. We are all scratching our heads, pulling our hair out, trying to figure out, is there even a way to correct any of you without us being the bad guy? That doesn't mean we can't do it better with more empathy and gentleness, possibly, and all that stuff. But I still believe that wouldn't make a whole lot of difference necessarily. Because all that matters is that the leadership exposed and showed, well, you did something you shouldn't have done. But we're supposed to desire someone to do that. But see, this goes back to things we talk about in terms of corrections all over Scripture. But are you correctable? Now, usually if you hear that phrase about are you correctable, you would think, are you stubborn? No, I'm talking about will you fall apart and walk away and, okay, instead of submitting and realizing, even though I don't like the way the message was delivered, it was still the right message. And most of us are not correctable. In the past, not now, so I don't want you to think about whoever's working with me now in MTY, but in the past, we've had people that were part of the ministry that would ask me to volunteer to do things, and then they would wonder, because I'm always talking about, back then, about needing people to help. They were like, we don't understand why you don't let us help you. We could help. And I know them to be completely emotionally in bondage, completely challenged in that whole area, and that if I tried to correct them, they would fall apart in front of my face. Because I've told people who work for me, you can ask them, I said, you will absolutely do something I didn't like and didn't want at some point, and I need to know that we can get past that. Because I have to be able to correct you, and I probably won't do it as gentle as you would like, most likely. But we need to be able to do that and go forward without creating an emotional puddle on a person just falling apart like I destroyed them. And that's not just me. This is with all leadership. And so I think Moses was dealing with all these things. I don't know how we got all into this, but it really had to do with you talking about leadership and secession and that kind of thing. Because the other part of the problem was this. Moses was saying, and he was right, and it shouldn't have been that way, that my strength as leader, as this strong, angry, controlling, you need to do this and stop doing that, has kept you guys barely obedient. And now I'm going to be gone, and it's just going to be chaos. Because Joshua doesn't have that as much. He says, you guys barely made it through with me. Now I'm going. Now, he says, I know as soon as I'm gone now, you guys are just going to go all over the place. So I'm more concerned than with what Hugo's saying about, well, then who would be next? But how would you react to who's next? Because I see how you react now. And that's with the strong-handed way I do things. So then what would that be next? And that would be my concern, is who would be next that could, not only that, but could handle the, I'm telling you, if you could ever see, just if I could have you sit and hear the phone calls all day long, and the things that are coming through, and they're not all petty nonsense, although a lot of them are. A lot of them are really serious life things that are going on. Do you know what that burden of responsibility feels like? To have to help people through their hardest things and hope that you're giving them the right counsel? Because if not, they may just fall apart, quit, and walk away and lose everything. And that happens only 6 or 7 hours a day. Here, Manny sits in the office for the last couple of months making CDs. How much am I on the phone? The whole time. And then when I'm on the phone, somebody else, and if you've been, how many of you have been on the phone with me and I had to put you on hold for a second because somebody else called in? Everybody, right? Because it just doesn't. Now that's not saying, I'm just trying to give you an idea that all of us have a struggle with our part in this. But some of you don't think very much about the leadership struggle. And that's an important part, because then if you did, you would receive it differently. Man, that guy's harsh. Well, yeah, I need to fix that. I don't want you to think that I'm excusing because of all of this, that I should be allowed to be that way. Or any leader should. But you have to understand, that's my struggle, just like you have yours. Anybody think they would like Rabbi or Pastor Moshe? I'm serious. I mean, do you think that he would be a fun guy to just have, do you think he'd be any different or any more gentle than me necessarily? I think he'd be worse. Or harsh, stronger. Okay? But we don't think about those things. All right? But we have to think about those things. Because that's the relational stuff. Learning to relate. Because guess what? We were sold. You know what you were sold? You were sold that hippie-looking Messiah who everything was just peace, love, and like the Beatles, right? Love, love, love. And that this is just going to be this one of those things where everybody's got like butterflies flying out of their ears and, and everything's just wonderful and rainbows everywhere and nobody's going to have any problems with anybody. Are you not planning to be you anymore? I'm still planning to be me. I'm hoping to be a better version, one that looks more like Yeshua. But I don't think Yahweh created you to be you just so that he could wave his wand and make you something else. But see, I think Christianity has had this idea that he's going to remove this stony heart just by fiat and give you a heart of flesh. We read the verse, let's see, that is in my notes. Verse 6 through 8 in chapter 30. And Yahweh your Elohim shall circumcise your heart and the heart of your seed to love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, so that you might live. Now understand this, the circumcision of heart. Now the Christians might read that verse and say, see, that's for us now, circumcision of heart. That flesh thing was for them. Actually, both was always required. But this is talking about a future time. But I want to point out to all those Christians that verse 8 is connected to verse 6. So he says he's going to circumcise their heart, so that verse 8, so that you turn back and obey. Obey what? And do all his commands that I command you today. Because when they say that we just have to do what Yeshua said, like I'd like to make the argument that this is Yeshua speaking. But even if they're just claiming the New Testament sort of idea that they want to do what Yeshua said, well, here it says that you're going to turn back with that circumcised heart and obey the commandments that were said here, not just later. But this whole circumcision of heart is not a circumcision of heart where he's just going to kind of wave his magic wand or his hand or whatever, and then it's done. He's going to cause you to go through experiences where you choose to circumcise your heart. And that, I promise you, is not a fun experience. That's where the correction comes in. And that we have to be ready for that and open to that and willing for that. Amen? Amen. Where's the mic? Okay, Dale, go ahead.
Rabbi, it's something that you said regarding examining self first, and it's that parallel between the plank and the speck. So it's something I've developed over this week and really analysed that I challenge myself first. Is it me? And then I consider the other person. So thank you for that.
Okay, amen. That's a good point. Because I'll tell you what I've experienced. And when I say that, I don't mean just personally, but when I've talked to husbands and wives and the conflicts they have, or anybody else is dealing with conflict, there's a disease, an emotional disease, whatever you want to call it. There's an emotional challenge that we almost all have, which is once the other person did something that affected you and hurt you emotionally, you tend to forget what happened before that. So while it may be true that that person called you names and put you down and ripped your heart out, but did you do anything first? I've had a conversation with a husband and wife about a child situation between the parents and the child. And I heard the wife blasting the husband and blasting the child, and after it was all over, she looked at me and I said, I've never heard more nonsense in my whole life. My counseling style is different than everybody's. And she looked at me shocked. I said, she looked at me, I said, I didn't hear one thing in there that you did. What did you do? And she looked at me like, what do you mean? My child did this, and my husband did this, and my child did this, and my husband. I said, I understand all that. But what did you do? I don't understand. We forget. As soon as that happens, as soon as something happens, we only focus on, well, he hurt my feelings, or he treated me harshly, or some other. I don't have to take that from anybody. Well, you might be right. You shouldn't have to maybe take that from anybody. So I'm not saying you're wrong on whatever happened. You may be completely right that what happened to you should never have happened, but that doesn't change the fact that it didn't happen just out of nowhere, most likely. Something you did may have triggered some of it, even if the reaction was completely over the top. So you must stop and pause and go, okay, did I do anything? Then you should also be pausing, and we've talked about this a lot, and I'm going to beat this to death and to death and to death. Every one of you, all of us, are undiagnosed. I'm just saying that to make us understand. You know what? If you knew, for example, that I had some sort of lettered, like OCD, AD, whatever, if there was letters that say I was diagnosed with something, which meant that I had officially diagnosed a problem with my anger, you might deal with it differently because, well, after all, we know he's diagnosed and he really can't control that. Well, all of you have things you really can't control. You're just not diagnosed. I'm not saying we all need to go get diagnosed, but we need to treat people more with the idea that maybe it's not that they did something, but they didn't have any control over it. And then we can react differently, because then you don't take it as personally, even though I know it feels very personal. But if you could, I had a husband and wife that were separated, and now they are living back together because of the simple idea of, I said to her, she said to me, well, I don't understand why he can't do this and why he can't do that. And I said, stop. Did you actually think about that he can't, not won't? Because she was using can't with the idea of won't, but she actually used the word can't. Well, why can't he do this? And how come? Well, what if he can't? Because in your mind, you're thinking, well, he just doesn't love me enough, or this, that, so he won't. But what if it's a can't? What if something's broken? Would you treat that person differently? And you know what? She said, oh, I never thought of that. Because I said to her, I said, I've been counseling him, and he's as frustrated as you are because he wants to, but hasn't the slightest idea how to do it because it's broken. That part in him is broken. It doesn't function. And he knows you want this, but right now he can't. It never even occurs to him. And that changed everything for her. It didn't make everything perfect afterwards, but it made it possible for them to get back together. Because she never even occurred to her that he couldn't. How would you treat somebody better if you found out that they couldn't? You know, you may open a door for somebody as they're walking through because you're in front of them. I think you absolutely would if they were in a wheelchair, because you would realize they can't do something. It's probably hard for them to get to the door and pull it open if they're in the chair. So why don't I hold it open for you? You know, we see somebody with their arms full of packages. We realize they can't easily do something, so you offer help. Why are we not doing that for everybody? Everybody's got can'ts, but we can't always see them. They're not visible handicaps, but all of you are handicapped. Am I offending everybody? Okay. But you are. You're emotionally handicapped on some level. Not necessarily physical. Some of you have physical handicaps as well. Those are more obvious. Those are easier to deal with. You know, I had a friend one time, we were in college, and he had knee surgery, and he was walking around on a cane with crutches or whatever it was, and somebody was picking on him and teasing him. And he said, well, at least my handicap is visible. Now, he's trying to be cutting, and he was, but you know what? There's a lot of truth to that. Okay? We would deal with each other so much better if there was a known and visible handicap. You know, we explained to you at the beginning of this feast, we have some special children that are nonverbal, that are handicapped in their development where functionally they have issues. And you know what? We all treat them in a whole much better way if we saw them doing something and know that there actually is a reason why they're doing it, or why they can't do something else or not doing something, than just thinking they're being stubborn, rebellious, or some other thing. Changes our whole mindset. I think that's, I know we were talking about these other things, but this is the core. This is where maturity has to come out of. Amen? All right, where's the mic? Okay, in the back. Richard?
Different subject. You made a comment to Arthur that, to me, is extremely important, and that was most of us, and I hope some of us are not this way, but a lot of us think that the Torah was written on Mount Sinai, and it was a negotiation between Moses and Hashem. But you made the correct statement. That Torah was written before anything was created. And then the Father locked himself into that book, and that's what he judges out of. And I think that is so eye-awakening, because now you realize the importance of the Torah.
Amen. We covered that when we read through Proverbs in the teaching on the holy day, or on Sabbath. And we read Proverbs, if you remember, and we talked about wisdom. And wisdom was before the foundation of everything, and we know that the Torah is wisdom. It's the expression of Yahweh's wisdom. And so all that stuff was in existence first, and that's important to understand. Excellent. Thank you, Richard, for pointing that out. Where's the mic? Okay, Hugo?
If I may, so thinking about going back to the succession and the structure and the longevity of the community and the nation, and applying that to our situation, perhaps make a suggestion for your longevity to benefit all of us. Might it be an idea that instead of all phone calls coming through to you, that they perhaps go to others who are your students first, and you qualify them and you invest into them, and what they can't handle, it comes up to you, so that some of the pressure comes up off from you, so that, you know...
None of those guys are full-time. Well, that's not true. Tony Hughes just started full-time, and we should be really excited about that. We've been praying for that, and the congregation down there was finally able to have him retire and go full-time. retire from his secular work so he could go full-time. But generally speaking, I don't have guys full-time. And that's not a knock on their congregations, because their congregations are small and can be very poor. Look, quite frankly, Beth Shalom, our local congregation, could not make me full-time. There's not enough there. Nothing, that's not a knock on Beth Shalom, although it's getting now almost to the point where it maybe could, because it's getting big enough. But for most of the time in the last 6 years, it has not been. It's through MTUI that we're able to be full-time, from the offerings and donations that come from everybody from the bigger pool. So how do we do this, Hugo, if I don't have full-time people to take the phone calls? You see what I'm saying? Because you need to be full-time to take a phone call. Listen, I can promise you, how many of you have called me between the hours of, and some of you did this not knowing I don't wake up that early, between 9 in the morning, well, actually, how many of you have called the phone number before 9 o'clock in the morning? Some of you, okay? All right? How many of you called after 9 o'clock at night? 10 o'clock at night? 11 o'clock at night? I go all the way to 2 in the morning, Dale's will still be up, okay? Because I've had to talk to Australia often at 2, 3 in the morning. What? Well, that was one mistake he made one time. He called me, forgot what time it was, and woke me up. But you could call at 10 and still wake me up at 10 in the morning. I may be asleep because I work until 4 in the morning. But the thing is, we are available through all the hours of the day. How many of you called between 9 and 12? Some. Between 12 and 5? Some. In other words, every hour of the day. And by the way, now that we get the phone forwarding to Robert, some of you think I'm up, don't realize the phone goes to him, and you've woken him up at midnight. He doesn't work my hours. He's the morning guy. He's up at 6 and he's ready to go by 7. I wake up at 10 and I go till 4 in the morning. It's totally different. You know, and by the way, that almost covers 24 hours. Between 4 and 6 in the morning is the only dead time. That's the only time not covered. Think about how that actually works out really nicely. Out of 24 hours, we have all but 2 hours covered, really, between the two of us. Potentially. Okay? But so, yes, I appreciate the comment. We have to pray that Abba will give the wherewithal for us to train up some people, identify the gifts, get more people full-time so that we can do the things you're saying. Tamara.
Thank you, Rabbi. Okay, so I have a question about Deuteronomy 31:23, where the name of Yehoshua was used. And if you fast forward to 32:44, Hosea is used. And then Deuteronomy 34:9, Yehoshua is used again. Is there a reason, or are these two different people?
Okay, in all of mine it says Yehoshua, so I'd have to look at the Hebrew itself to see if it's different. But I have Yehoshua in all of those places. So I'd have to look at the Hebrew to see if there actually is a difference there. So my translation doesn't match with yours. So that I can't answer the question without the Hebrew in front of me. Okay? All right, where's the... I know the Scriptures translation but I've got the 98 version. So maybe they did something different in 2000, the 2009, what's in 2009 version? Okay. All right, yes, go ahead.
That was actually one of my questions. And
okay, and what was your first name again?
Shelley.
Shelley, okay.
Yeah, in my version it says Hosea in 32:44 as well. But my other question in 32:13, can you explain what on earth is the honey from the rock and the oil from the flinty rock?
In 32:14.
13.
13, okay. No, I can't. Okay, next question. I really can't. I'm not trying to just be silly. I'd have to really go into and look for the idiomatic phrase and what is he trying to say, compare it to all these other verses. It's not something I've studied, so, well, I was kind of being a wise guy at first. I really don't have a good answer for that right now. Okay? What I can tell you is that again, this is one of those things in our sort of prophetic section that is meant for those who it's meant for. And at the time, it was for the leadership to understand going forward, to make sure that they knew this is what was prophesied about what would happen. Okay? However, realize that this is something that was prophesied to happen, but not necessarily something you need to understand, because it was not something for you to do. So that's where there's less of a need for us to understand these things. But we do have some other cool things and important things we still need to touch on that are on my list that nobody's checked. So who's got the mic? Okay, Sue has her hand up. And I'm going to grab a lozenge. Hold on. I'm amazed my voice has made it all the way to the last day this good.
Ready?
Ready, Sue. Go ahead.
In 31:26, talking about the book of the Torah, and it's going to be placed beside the ark. I've heard a teacher say that that's a second law. I was wondering if you could say something about that.
Absolutely. Now, that is one that I'm looking on my notes. It should have been there. I know I wanted to write it down. I must have had to jump up and grab the mic and forgot to write it back down. Thank you for catching that one. Okay. Oh, yeah. I have to do this teaching one of these days. There's teachers out there, I won't name them, you probably know who they are anyway, who are teaching about this Melchizedekian thing. And a big part of that Melchizedekian doctrine, position, whatever it is that the stuff that went into the next to the ark, not in the ark, were the laws that were against us. Okay? Hey, look, let's take the Peshat. We talked about this yesterday. Let's take the simple understanding. Moses says here, take this book of the Torah and you shall place it beside the ark. Okay? You can place it beside the ark of the covenant of Yahweh, and it shall be there what? As a witness against you. Oh, see there, it's that awful stuff. It's against you. No. Let me ask you a question. Did anybody have access to opening the ark? Did anybody? No. So what use would it be to put it in the ark if it's something you needed to witness? What does witness against you mean? How many of you have done this? Because modern technology, I know a lot of you have done this. Blah, 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 and you're saying blah, 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 and you're arguing with somebody about something that was texted, and then you say, well, let me show you. This is what you said. Right? Have you ever done that? Taken out your phone and pulled out the text as a witness against them. The documentation or the screenshot or whatever it was. I mean, I can tell you you're breaking the law and breaking the Torah, and you can say, well, that's all well and good, but you can't prove it because it's locked up in the ark. So as a witness against you, meaning it's accessible, so that it can be pulled out to say, here's the witness of what you should have been doing and what you shouldn't have been doing, and we can now refer to it because it's here next to the ark where we can get to it. Does that make sense? Is that the same thing you hear other these teachers saying? But that's the simple Peshat answer. The idea is that word, it's a witness against you. Well, it's a witness that you'd only pull out if the person was wrong and you wanted to show them they were wrong. So, of course, it's a witness against you. Not that it is against you. It's the witness to demonstrate that you're wrong. Because if you're doing what it says, nobody's going to refer back to it and say, I got a challenge with that. You're doing what it says. I think you're doing what it says. We're all in agreement. Why do we need the book? How many times have you done that with the Bible? You're arguing with somebody, and you're like, it doesn't say that. Yes, it does. And you pull it right out, and you have to look it up. As what? As a witness against the other person. Isn't that how you use it? Not all the time, but I mean often enough. All right, so in verse 26, he says, take this book of the Torah that you need, this law that brings life, and I lay before you life and death, this law that you need to guard, to do. I'll give you one of the verses you missed in chapter 29 and verse 9. What he was talking about here, he says, look, therefore you shall guard the words of this covenant and do them, because doing them brings prospering. Verse 9, chapter 29, verse 9. But do the Torah, because Torah brings prosperity. Prosperity doesn't necessarily mean money, but you shall prosper. You shall be successful in your things that you're doing. You're going to prosper in all you do. It says, and you shall prosper in all that you do. So the Torah is supposed to be part of that covenant. And Moses says in many, many